Wow. That's cool. Or do you have like is it city? Yeah, you want to use that private space?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cityscape Community Art Space. I'm Nancy Cottingham-Powell. I'm the Executive Director of North Van Arts, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today. This is probably the first event we've had in this space since February of 2020. So other than people coming to do the gallery, this is a momentous occasion. And for those of you at home, hello. And we are all socially distanced in the gallery. And we've got this screen up in front of us so that our two artists can take off their masks and be able to feel a little bit more comfortable while they're talking and presenting to you tonight. Okay, and I'm leaving my mask on because I don't want to contaminate the mic. So these are all the COVID things we learn as we walk through this journey together. So I would like to, before I move forward, acknowledge that we are on the unceded territories of the ᒪՊḵᓱ̨ṕη̗ people and thank them immensely for the journey of community that we are on together. And we feel very strongly that this is their land and we are guests and we are honored to be working with them in building community. I like to say I'm hoping that we are all starting to be in the same canoes, headed in the same direction, as Rebecca Duncan, one of our good friends, would say. So I also want to welcome everyone here to this very special talk that is part of a show that Adele Arseneau helped put together. And she is our curator for Pushing Boundaries, and this is the second time that we have been privileged to have a curator of Indigenous origin be helping put the show together, which was imperative to me, and it took us a while to get there. But we are very, very pleased that this has happened, and we're so happy to have Salisha Old Bull join us today so that these two can be in conversation about this exhibition and about their work as artists and curators. So a few things that I want to do just before we move forward. I do want to say that this is being live streamed, as I mentioned, and we will be receiving questions from the audience here in Cityscape and also from the live streaming audience. So they put it in the chat for YouTube. Is that what they do? Comments in YouTube, and then we are monitoring that and we can ask the questions here live. So it's interactive even online. How fun is that? I can't move forward without thanking people because obviously things like this do not happen in a bubble. So first of all, I'd like to thank Adele Arseneau so much for her amazing work as a curator, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you. I mean, we've been working with Adele for years as an artist, but it is wonderful to let your creative juices fly, as I like to say with curators. So I really appreciate that and all the artists that have participated in this. And then I also want to thank the DeMille Foundation because without their contribution, we would not have been able to honor these artists by paying them carve-back rates to participate in this exhibition. And that was very important to us as we move down the journey with Indigenous people, that we are respecting their time. And we can't thank Marnie Carter at the DeMille Foundation enough. We also want to thank our regular funders, the City of North Vancouver, the District of North Vancouver, the Rec and Culture Commission, the Province of British Columbia, the BC Arts Council, and the Department of Canadian Heritage, and some of the federal agencies. So all of those agencies help us open the doors and do the programming that we do year round. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, to go to northvanarts.ca, check out what's happening. You can also go to the northshoreculturecompass.ca, and that's our new online tool that we launched last year. And that is capturing all cultural assets, not all of them yet, but we're getting there, across the North Shore. And it's a great storytelling tool. And we have a whole First Nations category that is telling all sorts of Indigenous stories. So it's very much a journey that we're on with the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh people. people or helping capture language, stories, all sorts of things. So it's a very important way of sharing those with a wider audience. So I encourage you to have a look. So enough from me. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And it's my pleasure to introduce Adele Arseneau and Salisha Old Bull.
Danse, Tawau, Adele Sigasan, Nia, Nehio Egwa Apitau Gosasan, Prince George Otinia, Bogo, Squamish Nation ASCII, North Vancouver, ᒪՊԻᓱぅ. So in English, hello and welcome. I'm really happy to see all of you here. Thank you very much for your time. That is a gift. And I'm just so grateful to be here with Salisha Old Bull from Montana. I'm in awe of her skills, and I'm just thrilled to be having this conversation with her about her art pieces in the gallery and this exhibition, because for me to see our art situated in the present as living, or actually not even art, because I know in Cree and in Métis languages, we don't have art as a word. Everything that we create is a visual representation of our experiences, our story, and our language, which is really important to us. So that's a lot of what I create myself, is just an embodiment of my stories. So this is me, and I'm going to pass it to Salisha to introduce herself, and then we'll get into our conversation.
Hello everybody, Salisha Old Bull. I'm from Arseneau, Montana. We recently relocated here to Vancouver. My husband got a job at the University of British Columbia, and so we decided to begin a new chapter here, and we really like it. I'm Salish and I'm Crow. My mom raised me on the Flatland Reservation in Western Montana, and I spent a lot of my childhood with my grandmother, Rachel Arley Bowers, which is who taught me how to bead. And I grew up in a town called St. Ignatius, and then I spent a lot of time with my family in Arley, and that's where I have my other home. And we've been going back home every now and then too, so that's a little bit to start off.
Thank you, Salisha. So this exhibit was basically trying to situate us in the present using functional pieces. And Salisha's contribution to the exhibit was her son's cradle boards, which are amazing pieces. So Salisha, how did you start making cradle boards?
Well, one of the things that I was inspired by was, well, my ancestors, of course. My mom and my grandmother had really hard lives, and these type of things, they're very time consuming, and they're taking care of their families, so much so that they did not really have time to do this, which would be like an extra thing. And so myself, the most that my mom could do for me is like just like swaddling, or I might have had like a bag, what they call moss bags, I guess, but that is very important to me, and because of how hard that my mom worked, I was able to be a little more successful in life, and I wanted to be able to provide for my kids, and I wanted, because the significance of the board is an heirloom, it becomes an heirloom. I wanted to be able to have something for my children and for my grandchildren. And so that's how I decided to go forward with that. I wanted to be able to have something for my kids and be able to sort of keep alive a tradition that was going away just because of hardship or general, just life in general. And also our generation, my generation is, I feel like one of the ones that are fighting to keep a lot alive. We've seen a lot leave, and on the Flag Reservation, there's a lot of people that they don't speak the language or didn't when I was younger, and then it's kind of become a movement. And then the other tribe where I'm from, where Crow is, it wasn't a loss. Crow is my first language. When I was a baby, that was the first thing I spoke. And I lost that when we moved. And I was in kindergarten, and then I don't know Crow and I can understand words, but just that desire to grasp onto something is how I started, or how I was inspired to do the very first cradle board. And on top of that, after I had gotten married, I thought that I couldn't have children, and it took us 7 years before, and it's always that moment when you give up, right? Like you say, I give up. And then, we got pregnant with our first child, and so I couldn't not do one. I had to do one, and so I, those were a lot of the things that inspired me to to start making my first board.
Wow, that's amazing. I know for myself, coming from not a lot of tradition being displaced, I do moss bags, and I just recently started doing little miniature cradle boards, but I do moss bags for the Moss Bag Project. And that was something for me of reclaiming part of my own tradition and heritage being displaced. So one of the things that was really cool to learn was that in order to have these teachings, it was something that you had to learn before you were even allowed to get married, like within our cultures, which was something really cool. And now I'm learning, and I'm hoping to pass that on to the next generation of mothers. So there's a lot of protocols and a lot of tradition that go into these pieces. What tradition and protocol, well, not protocols, but what traditions can you share about these cradle boards from your culture?
Well, I know for sure the boards that you see here is a really contemporized version, and the length and the shape of them are probably the last, they're based off of photos, and so we estimated the height of those boards, but so the last time that boards are really prominently used regularly, they were more of a decorative piece than a practical piece. And so the color of the hide is a decorative aspect of that, because that's a brain tan hide, and if you smoke the hide, the smell, it's a sleep inducer. And so for babies, normally if you, like a long time ago, the boards, there's a lot of practical things, and one of them being the board didn't used to be that big. It was a smaller board because they would have to be able to manage the board while they were working. And so then you had to smell, and then the lacing up of it, that on the boards that we have are based off of a lacing pattern that was passed on to my husband from his mom. So that's my mother-in-law's lacing technique. And I think little things like that are signature or unique to like women or family and their artistic ability. And so all craftsmanship is like that, like even like with moccasins, like women that like do little unique things to their moccasins. And then a long time ago you could look at it and say, oh, so-and-so made those because it has this cut or it has this notch or something like that. And so that's a piece of it. But the lacing up of the baby is like a swaddling baby. And that brings a lot of security to them as a young child. And so they can, I don't know, it's good for their posture, it's good for their legs. My mom says that it's good for keeping them to walk straight, that when they get to walking. There's a number of reasons that board is good for. And then there's a strap on one of those boards. I don't know why we never got around to putting a strap on the other one, because those two big ones are my kids' boards. And the strap can be put like across the shoulder right here, and then you can carry it when you're walking. And then so like if you were, or you could put it on a horse saddle too. You could loop it up on there so your horse could carry it. I'd be scared to death to do that right now, but maybe a long time ago they were real good with their horses. What else? There used to be, some boards have a bar or like a shade, sometimes that will be sort of like I can't remember the name, a mobile. I don't know what that's called, but kind of serves as that purpose to kind of occupy the baby. But we didn't have one on that, and I don't think that style has that, or you probably could, I guess. But and then the other thing too is on that very small board, I used that as a submission last year for the Herd Guild Indian Art Market. So I completed all the pieces to it, and the board is supposed to have a cover. So I think as years have gone by, there's a cover, a decorative cover that can go over the top of the white hide to keep the hide clean and safe, and from getting wet too. And so that smaller board, I finished the whole board, but this one, I was telling Adele, I'm going to make it a goal to make a cover for that before I have grandkids. So if they use those boards, they'll have completed boards. But
That's gonna be a lot of work. Oh my goodness. I'm looking forward to seeing it though, that's for sure, because those are beautiful. Another thing that I was thinking about is that in our tradition, for a woman to have like a mossag or tiginigan, which is a cradle board, usually it would be like her husband's sister or her husband's family that would make it for her while she was pregnant. Do you have anything like that in your culture in regards to these?
Well, I know like for us, I was told by my uncle that you don't do anything for your unborn child until after it's born. And I know in both traditions, both Salish and Crow, it's like that. You don't, you're not supposed to really like have stuff for your baby like beforehand. You're supposed to wait until after it's born. But I think nowadays you can have like just enough to get yourself out of the hospital, and then you can get things after that. And I think that's like your family is supposed to help you to do the running around for you to do that. But because of having to wait for my first child for so long, I really followed every rule, and we weren't even supposed to think of possible names. So I didn't, and it was really hard because my first son didn't have a name for like a week or something like that. So I was like, I don't know what to name him. And so with the board, I know one of the reasons that I was able to have a board is because I really thought about it. You're not supposed to get anything for the baby. How am I supposed to have a board? Because if I make a board, then the baby will be too big for it by the time I get it done. And I was like, that's not going to work. And so I talked to my uncle about it, and he said that that's the one thing you can do. And somebody in a family can do it for you, or you can work on it yourself, but it's the only thing that you're allowed to do in preparation for the baby. You can't do anything else. And so that's what I did. And at the time when I first started working on that, I was working full time, and I was working, I don't know how to explain it, but like 2 weeks straight, like I never had weekends. I was like, I had to fight my mom. My mom didn't want me to sit and bead. She's like, you need to get up and walk. And I was like, well, I want to just bead though. but I managed to get it done, and there was no regrets afterward. So I worked on that board until 2 weeks after my first son was born. So he's 2 weeks old, and I finished it. But
Wow, that's a lot of time. One of the things I find with traditional, like learning traditional skills and returning back to our traditional ways is that it's really hard to learn about the techniques, the materials, the construction, everything around that. I know when I created mine, I did a lot of research. How did you find it in your journey in trying to find everything you needed to construct these in the traditional way of your people?
well, I think for me, one of the things I'm super thankful for is I got to spend a lot of time with my grandmother when I was really young, from like, I don't know, off and on my whole life, really. And she taught beading as her employment. She taught at the tribal college there, Salisha College, and on the Flat Indian Reservation. And she was also taught, or not taught, but she also spent a lot of time with one of our elders who was very big pusher of cultural revitalization, and her name was Agnes Vandenberg. And then also, my family, we come from a really strong line of women, and my, geez, I don't know how many greats, maybe 3 greats. My grandmother that we come from her name is Mary Ann Topstead Combs. So the combination of those things, I really attribute everything to my elders, my ancestors. I feel like those are my resources. I wouldn't even be interested in anything if it wasn't for spending time with her. And then along with her, there's of course my mom and my uncle. His name is Johnny Arley, and then his late wife Joan Arley, who's actually from this area, and she is a coastal Salish woman. And whenever I would sit with them, because it was just me, I didn't have siblings, my mom didn't have any other kids, they would help me to learn how to bead and teach me about colors and designs. And my grandma spent a lot of time collecting designs and talking about designs. And then after I got married, I and my husband were always looking at old photographs. I think a lot of people do that, you're really inspired by your ancestors. And so we used what was documented, and then we contemporized the things that we saw. And one of the things I tried to make sure to do is follow some of our rules, like for colors, like both Salish and Crows, like we don't use black in our work, and we don't intentionally do black beadwork for our children. We do it, black is means like a mourning, like you're sad, or, you know. And so we would just use other colors, and I just would along with trying to pair some of the older colors that I've seen in beadwork and some of the things that I've learned about from artist work, like trade beads, I guess. I like those colors. And also, just because of all that time with my grandmother, I've always had an affinity to collecting beads. So I just try to do things like the skill would be to do something on one size of bead or similar size of beads. And nowadays, so as growing up, I would collect beads from powwow stands or go to celebration, collect it from a powwow stand. But as I got older, and probably the last 10 years, it's a lot easier just to get them online. So
That's what we call innovative native.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time ordering beads when I probably shouldn't, and so just collecting beads that I have a particular liking to, and then the hide. That's also a huge skill. That was a hide tanner, but the hide, all the hide on all of those, they're from 3 different kinds, but they're all done by a man he does that as a living. He tans hides back home. His name is ᒪՊḵᓱṕΗ. We catch him when he's in the process because you just have to catch him before they smoke a hide, and then I'll call him, and then he's a friend of my mom's, and so because you get grandfathered into friendships, right? And I'm like, hey, we need a white hide, and he'll be like, all right, I'm gonna put this one aside for you, and okay. So then we go pick it up. So he does that, and then every time we go, he gets after us for not learning how to tan hides, but that's okay. So, you go up and you get the lecture.
You beat me into my next question here. I was going to, because I'm a hide tanner, and I noticed the white hides, and I've always been taught white hides, they're not smoked, so they're not water resistant. And when you get a white hide wet, you can actually return it back to its rawhide state. So you prefer not to get it wet, which is why you were talking about doing those beaded covers, which helps me to understand that would keep that safe. What I was wondering, materials, I know for myself, trying to find and source traditional materials can sometimes be quite difficult. Do you have, how do you find sourcing materials for what you need, traditional materials and that? Do you prefer to go that way, or do you prefer to keep innovating and changing with the times?
I would really like to collect things or gather. I mean, if it was my choice, one of the things that I don't even really know how to explain, and I'm sure everybody's probably had this experience, but the positive side to this pandemic was I was able to go do almost everything in 2020. Before that, we all work full time, and if you want to gather, you have to put in PTO, and then you can only be gone for a short period of time because you have to save some for the next time. And traditionally, every season, there's probably something that's going to be ready at a certain time, and when it's ready, it doesn't wait for you to take PTO. You have to drop everything you're doing to go catch something. And it was really I feel like it was like an excuse, like I think I got resentful of that situation, and so I would just I sort of like got defeated about it, and I'm not old, and I felt bad about it, but I would say, no, I can't go do that because I gotta work, and I come out in a bad tone, like, yeah, I can't do those things, I gotta work, but, in 2020, we were able to still work, but then you could like go anywhere and work. You could work from anywhere. And so we were able to travel, and I think I might have only missed one thing that year. And that felt good to be able to stop and to gather the things that we needed. And so the traditionally sourced things are sort of how I was taught growing up, is it's hard work to be Indian. You have to really not make excuses for the things that you want to keep into your family's life. And, for me, passing it on to my children, I have 3 daughters that are grown, and, we fought really hard to make sure that they had a lot of things instilled in them. And so just that idea of it's not about me anymore, and just being able to make time for those things is pretty important. So like the traditionally sourced things, my excuse is why I'm able to like do a hide is because I think I will cry if I go hunting, because I don't know if I can watch animals. I don't know if watch animals die, but at the same time, like there's a lot of work. I mean, I have to cut the meat, and oh my god, it's a lot of work. And then I've helped in hide tanning, but I've never done a whole hide. And I watched one of my daughters trying to do hides, the whole hide, and it's just a lot of work. A lot of those things are a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. So I think for me, I like to support people who nowadays are doing that as their profession, I guess you could say. But they're doing it as an income, and they're doing it because that's what they would rather do instead of going to an office. And so, like Randy does hides all year, and Randy has a shop, and I would rather give Randy money, than trying to figure out how to produce the hides really quick like that. And he just has them ready to go. And so the same with the beads is, I go online, and that's how I and Adele met. We met online, and we in our group, there's a whole group of friends, and we're able to talk to each other. And we have one friend in particular who's really good at online shopping. And so if we need something very particular, we can all talk to each other about where we can find those things. Some things are really hard to find, but I think that's where I'm at. I'm a very contemporary resource gatherer.
Wow, thank you for all of that. That's wonderful. One of the things that I want to bring attention to is that each nation has their own way of taking care of their babies. Like in my Métis side, we use ᒪՊԻᓱ̓selvfølgselvfølg, which are the moss bags. On my mom's side, we're Nepiao, which is Cree, and they use the Tiginigans, which are cradle boards. Now, I know back east, they have black ash trees, so they actually would cut the tree, they would create the boards themselves, put them together, they would bend the wood. There's a difference between, like the cradle boards I have in the exhibit, it's just a single bush bar, so it's just a round hoop basically. But typically it would be shaped in an M, and they're called bush bars because they help protect the baby. So if the cradle board was set up so the baby could watch their mother's work, if it fell over, it would actually support itself. Or whereas the round one, it'll just roll over onto its side. But with the typical Cree one, it's shaped like an M, so it would land and it would stay that way and protect the baby. It's also called a bush bar because if you're walking through bush, it would help protect them from the branches and everything. And they could hang, like, do the mobile thing and use it as a sunshade also. So it's interesting to see, and it would be lovely to see each nation come back into reclaiming these traditions, because I do believe that using the moss bags and the cradle boards for babies is actually really beneficial. And yeah, I think a lot of mothers would benefit from having this way of carrying their babies for them. Could you speak to us about the highlights and lowlights of putting these cradle boards together?
Okay, highlights and lowlights. I'll start with the highlights. So the highlight is I like talking about ourselves is a really challenging thing. We're pretty much raised. It's not that great of a thing. It's bragging. You're not really supposed to talk about yourself, just so that somebody can do that for you. But one of the things that I've noticed is that doing something like this is inspirational for our younger people, and that was kind of half of my intention. I feel like I think of my kids, but I know that it's just not my kids who would see this, and so in our community, being able to do something today that you would only see in a photograph, and showing that it can be done from beginning to end, and that it's possible to do that before. So for the use of this board, it's possible to complete a board beginning to end for your child and do that for your child. I think it's inspirational to our youth and to our people in general, that we have ways, and those are our ways, and those are things that we do to help make our children strong. And so they have a really strong sense of self-identity, and that's the highlight. I really feel strongly about that. I feel like that prevents a lot of identity loss. I know our youth really struggle with that, and having things like this shows them like these are very specific things that come from where I live in Arden, and these things come from that region or that land, and every, Adele was saying, every tribe has that very specific thing. It used to be you could just look at somebody and just know where they came from. You didn't even have to talk to them, and you could. I think in a rural specific place there was sign language, so you could communicate if you didn't know each other's language, but that was how you knew, just by looking at the way that they were dressed or the things that they had like that. And so for me, that's a huge thing in my life, and it has been ever since I had kids. But also with the other board, I started off a whole other direction in life, and it wasn't until the last, since 2017, that I got real dead serious about trying to pursue art. And so that smaller board was one of my first submissions to an art show, and I'm doing another one for their art show that's coming up, because it's going to be like a series of 4, and that has a whole story that goes to it. And so that's also a highlight, because it just validates my path through art. And that one I can't put no baby in there. But the low light, There's a couple of times, like one of them being, initially when I started, I just sort of brushed over it, but like my mom, who has worked so hard her whole life, didn't. At first, she didn't support it all the way. She got upset at me for sitting down all the time because for her it was more important for my health to be up and moving around as a pregnant woman, and so that was hard. And then, but when the baby came in, she was like 100% for it, and she was happy that I did it. And also, I think other low light is there was one time, I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but there was one time when we were at one of my daughter's basketball game or sports game or something, and where I lived, there's the racism is kind of a lot, I guess, but I just sort of put it aside. And I remember there was a time when we had somebody take a picture of me. I had my son on my board, and then I think what is that thing that kids use? Snap. That first started, and they snapped the story, but my kids all had Snap, and so they were like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was it was put negatively on Snap, and just young, non-Indian children not really understanding, and I mean they don't get it, and so sometimes we run into those issues, and I was immediately over it, but it's just like every now and again you run into small things. And then I had one other thing, I guess, just there's really no other, like the low light of it, but I just know that the highlights overshadow all of that, and the benefits overshadow all of that, and so I'm carrying on and continuing to do those things. And maybe it's because I was the only child, you just be able to be all confident.
My apologies, Salisha. I probably shouldn't have used the word low light, but instead have used the word challenges. Like did you have any real challenges in creating those boards, especially like the first one? Because you're working mostly from, photos and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, probably, not anything in a negative way. I would say it's all positive. The challenges were all positive. My husband really had a lot to do with helping me to construct these. I did the work, but he digitized those designs. He found the designs and digitized them, but I did the beadwork on there. And then we did the colors together, and he will pick a color. I'm like, why do you use that color? He will pick a color, and then we'll like fix them together. And the awesome thing at first, it's hard. A lot of people, and I give a lot of kudos to people who still hand draw, because that's the way it was done. Designs were done hand drawn. We did all of that. All of everything you see was done on a computer screen. So my husband digitized the design, so then when he printed it and he taped it together, the papers together to do the shape, and he cut it out for me, and it was already printed in that color. And then every now and then again, I'll like add something in there if I needed to, like make it a different, or I could do it as I was going. And that's really hard. It's really hard to do that. You have to like really kind of pay attention to your computer programming and stuff like that. And I don't know, I think we're lucky to have that technology to be able to do that. And then that small board, he helped me with that. I did more of that design myself. I tried to, because it was the first one I was doing, I tried to incorporate things from both Crow and Salish into that. But the story itself, it's a Salish story and it's a wintertime story, which means you're only supposed to tell it at a very specific time. And then the colors, I did the colors on those, and in particular, my clan from Crow runs in a matrilineal clan system, and my clan from Crow is Pecan. And I used the clan color on that on purpose because it was the first the first board that size I did. So I was just trying to put a little bit of myself in there. So just trying to be respectful to the things where I come from and make sure to pay or respect it, and we pay it back, I guess, is what I was trying to go further.
Okay, so now I'm gonna nerd out on all you guys because I'm a beader too. So, Salisha, can you tell me all the different stitches you use to create that beadwork?
I used the kind of beadwork I do is I guess it's called contour beading, but it's flat stitch, which means it's done with 2 needles. And my technique, I tag every 2 beads, so that's how it lays flat. So you lay, or you put 2 beads and you put a string, and you just keep doing that, and then you follow the design. So 2 needle flat stitch is the stitch, and then the edging is a wraparound. And that's just what it sounds like. You put a string, and then make the beads go to where you want, and then you bring it back up to the other side. You just keep looping it around like that. But mine, I have a stitch that I do, and I don't know if my stitch is like a common. I don't know if it's I've never learned if that's like a common knot or something. I do like a knot on it so that it keeps the beads taut up on. I've seen people talk about it every now and then, but I don't know if it's the same or if I don't know. We'll have to sit together.
Actually, I just started doing that in some on beadwork too, to keep the beads where I want to go. It's like control. So is there anything else you'd like to add about these crepe boards, or do you want to get into some of your other work? Because not only are you an amazing bead artist, but you're also an amazing painter, and you have a show on in Montana right at the moment. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So, yeah, I didn't bring any pictures. I did bring a picture. This is this is that last board on this side, and this is a picture of me and my older son and my youngest son. They're sitting in the back over there. They're all big now. And the second time I did a board, I finished it on time. Like I finished it like a day or 2 before he was born. And so we got to use it. We got to take him home from the hospital on it. But that's something. And my husband was like, "You have to bring this picture." We used both of those boards until the babies grew out of those boards. They did really well on those boards. So there's that. And the show in Montana, like I just graduated from University of Montana with a BA in art, and I did a whole online program because I was working full time, and I had my 2 kids, and I had 3 daughters before that, so I'd already been to college before that, and I don't know, it's just one of those days where you're just like, what am I doing? And so I enrolled back in school when my youngest daughter was studying college, and I started doing part-time, and so I just finished it this past spring, and before I knew that my husband was getting a job here, they had an art call on campus for staff. And because I was working there, I decided to put my name in the hat. And I was like, yeah, I want to try to do a solo show. And so they accepted me right when they found out he was getting this job. And then I told them I couldn't do it, but then they said it would be fine. I could do it as an alumni. So I did it. So when I got here to Vancouver, I was running all over the place trying to find canvases and sitting in my empty apartment trying to paint. And anyway, my whole focus, generally, I like to focus on traditional ecological knowledge, and that's an academic term that they made for Indigenous ways of knowing. And we call it TEK, that's the acronym. And I really like the things that our land teaches us. I really enjoy learning more of those things. And so one of the flowers that our tribe, the Bitterroot Salish, depended on was the bitterroot flower. And I can't remember how to say it in Latin because I'm not Latin. Just kidding. I can't remember how to say it, but they named that flower after Lewis from Lewis and Clark, those explorers, which is really, I don't really appreciate that, but the Latin term, it has his name in there. And anyway, that has a story to it, a really significant story to our survival. And so my whole show is based off of that story. And I use hillshade maps, and then I paint abstract. And so I did, I think it was 9 or 10 paintings with hillshades in the background, and then aspects of that story as bigger images. And so that's the solo show that I did, and that's ending next week. So I'll be going back to Montana to go de-install.
Well, you gotta come back.
I know.
I love your art. I'm a big fan. And if people don't know what hillshade is, it's a type of map that we use. We've used it in forestry, we use it in surveying, engineering to determine like contour and topography. So yeah, it's to see her pieces. I got to see them in progress, so it was really cool because I mean she gets a lot of detail into each piece and she just gets it done. It's like, wow, you impress me. So continuing on from that, how else do you use your art to keep your culture alive?
Well, I really do like beading. I paint because sorry, I was catching one of my kids. I was encouraged by my teachers to keep painting. Well, because I went to art school, right? So I'm like, okay. So I'm doing that. I really am into color theory, and then the beading is where all my heart is at. So I try really hard to bead every day. When I'm not doing an art piece, I'm working on something for one of my kids or one of my family members. I don't have, because it's just boys, and we had boys for a long time, but like last week we had our first granddaughter, so we have a girl finally. After a lot of boys, there's like a lot of boys that were born before this little girl was born, so she's got a lot of hanging on her shoulders now. Anyway, the beading, I was just listening to something this morning talking about how craftsmanship with women's work in any culture, it's really phenomenal. So there's different types of textile work that women do, and somehow there's like this weird assumption that it's just a woman's thing. And but for our tribe, it kind of is, beading is like a woman's thing, but men bead and men know how to do it really well. There's a lot of men that do beadwork, like really awesome beadwork. And it's not really like a rule, it's just a very specific skill, I guess. And so for me, being able to produce beadwork in the different aspects of our culture is pretty important to me. So I just want to make sure that I'm always doing something for my family, or mainly my children, always my children. My heart, that's the second thing, is always making sure that they have something. And they don't even know how much work it takes. My one kid, he really said, "Mom, my moccasins are not needed." I was like, no, but that's hard work. Your finger growing.
Over to my house and learn my traditional ways, because in order to attend powwow, you had to do your own regalia, whether you are male or female. So yeah, there was no gender in regards to that, right? So you learned how to make all of what you wear to powwow, depending on which tradition you were carrying or dancing. So yeah, he could come and learn.
Yeah, just damaging some threads.
So, do you have any questions for me? Thank you very much for contributing your cradle boards to this exhibit. I mean, they are magnificent, and it really adds to all the artists in this exhibit have been fabulous. I mean, yeah, I'm just honored to have each of these pieces here to be shown in the gallery for people to see and interact with. So
I had like 100 questions, but I try to keep them about the work here. But the boards that you did, can you tell me about? So I recently went to the Museum of Anthropology, and I saw some boards were from a different tribe, but I think there were some Cree ones, and I think the ones that were not labeled, they just said plains, which is new to me. But can you tell me about the boards how you decided to do, like, the style?
that's a good question. Thank you. The style, because of the size, I was really constrained by the style, so I couldn't do traditional Cree wish bars on these, because it took me 10 pieces of bamboo for every one that got made because they're all heat bent. So I had to boil those pieces of bamboo for quite a long time, and then very, very carefully wrap it around the handle of my chisel to try and get form. So like I said, it was roughly about 10 skewers for every board that I've made. And I'm actually hoping to make about 161 of them total, which is will represent all of the institutions that participated in the residential school system in Canada, as far as I know. They're listed in the class action suit. So this 10 that I have here in the gallery that we're exhibiting is one from every province that participated. So there's 10 provinces that did participate, and then I'll be continuing on and doing the remainder to show all of them. I also have a call out for anybody who's been impacted by residential schools or survivors to participate and make their own cradle board. I have an email that they can just send me an email, and I'll send out a pattern, And with the hopes that maybe we can have a show and show everybody, it's kind of like throwing a rock into a lake and watching how far those ripples go, because when the Kamloops, the bodies in Kamloops were exhumed or found, I knew that that wasn't going to stay in the forefront of the media, and that to me was very important because those impacts of those institutions, they carry far. You know, like people don't realize how far they carry. You know, I have that history in my family, and I know I deal with it. I deal with the repercussions of it. So, and this is here now, right? So I just want to show people like how far-ranging those effects went, because you can't argue with what your eyes see. So that's my hope, and yeah.
How about something I noticed on there was the designs on there? What made you decide those designs?
The designs all come from flowers and patterns that I've seen used traditionally within both of my family cultures. Traditionally, with Métis, we use the 5-petal flower. In my family, we also had roses because we're high tanners, and roses are used in high tanning. So a lot of people don't know that. And also, being Cree, I try to use some of the flowers and style that come from Saskatchewan, Manitoba.
All right, how about this show though? What inspired you to curate? What inspired you for this show? It's so exciting.
Oh, that was tough. Oh my gosh. When I got chosen, I was so excited, and I just knew that I wanted to bring an artist from a different nation. I wanted each artist to be from a different nation, because I wanted to show that we're not all the same. We have a lot of differences. We have some similarities, but we have a lot of differences in our cultures, and I wanted to share that because I feel sometimes we get all lumped together, and I don't feel that's fair, because each of us have, our nations have different protocols, we have different ways of addressing things, we have different, even the difference between my cradle boards to your cradle boards, and say to somebody else's cradle boards, right? I know down in the south, they do them with, it's almost like it's woven, and it has a hood that comes over the top, which I think is really cool. But I mean, there's just so many differences. And I think that's really important. And I wanted it to be functional items so that we could show that this is how we are keeping our culture alive, even though we have had to deal with, rebuilding our culture in a lot of different ways, because our cultural knowledge, the chain of that has been broken because of the residential schools, and just trying to access that can be sometimes really difficult, both within our cultures and out of our cultures because of, gatekeeping. I see people who teach non-natives, and then the non-natives won't teach on the other natives, which makes it really difficult because it's like you've got to prove yourself, which I can understand that, but at the same time, it's really hard when you're Indigenous. It's already really hard. So that just makes our journey just so much harder. And especially when you've been dislocated and cut off from everything that, traditionally would be yours. My family is originally from Saskatchewan, and I grew up in BC. I was adopted to Calth. So I know more about the Calth culture than I did my own. So my journey, I just learned about my grandfather's roots a couple years back, and I was able to get that to my mom because his records, we had a lot of a difficult time finding his records. So, to learn about my mom's side of the family and all of that we didn't have access to was, it's a journey of rediscovery, and I know a lot of Indigenous people have to go through this, so.
That's awesome. I started thinking about the things that, so some of the things that you did before you were doing textile work, does it have a relationship with the things that you did before, like your painting? Have you tried to tie those things together?
That's actually a rather interesting question because I had a stroke in 2018 and it affected me quite badly. So I used to do fine line work that was taught to me by my good health family. And I don't really do that anymore because I have a heartbeat. I like to call it a heartbeat in my painting. Makes it really hard to do the really fine lines in my designs. And I used to do everything freehand. I never used any templates or anything like that. So now I carve and I bead and I high tan, and it's easy for me that way because I can fix my mistakes. With painting, I can't fix my mistakes because acrylic paint dries fairly quickly. So that's the nice thing about being able to carve and to bead and to high tan, because also it's my way of healing myself and teaching my body, teaching me how to be in my body. So yeah, it's been a big part of my journey, actually, my art.
Thank you. I'm super interested in the comments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is it time for Q&A yet, or?
Sure.
Does anybody in the audience here have any questions they'd like to ask?
So what I'd like you guys to do is repeat the question so that people at home can hear it as well.
You bet. Sir?
You talked about Bitterroot and the fact that Lewis and Carroll was built into the Latin name of it, of the Bitterroot, but you didn't tell us what the flathead word for Bitterroot was.
Oh, so he said, I talked about Bitterroot and I didn't say what the word was. So the Salish word for Bitterroot is Spetlam. And the awesome thing about being here is it wasn't a very difficult transition because there's a couple of stories, but our tribe is said to be originated from over here somewhere. And then there's different theories about how we ended up where we were, but we're the westernmost Salish band. And we have creation stories that talk about things that we don't have, that all the other Salish people have. And I wish I could tell you some of their wintertime stories. So we have like this taboo that goes with those stories, and I sort of been raised like that, so I won't even talk about the story. But Spetlam is the word, and what I was trying to say is that the language, the noises from the language are very similar to the tribes here. I can hear some of the same noises, so when I'm listening, so when they did the ritual opening, the woman that was talking, and pretty much anytime I get to hear the language from the tribes in this area, it sounds comforting. But yeah, the word is Spetlam, and we eat the white root. We dig up the root and we eat the white part of it. We have to peel it, and you have to get it in the springtime when like the sap is running, and that's the part that we get. And we used to be able to get really big gunny sacks full of it, and the woman would go out for like 2 weeks and then gather it. And it was the staple of our food we had all year, and then you go back and like allow it. So that's the bitter root.
Lady in the beige jacket.
These are absolutely beautiful, and you can see you're a painter. But my question is, they seem to be perfectly symmetrical. Is there a reason for that? Is there something in the tradition that you make them symmetrical, like each side is perfect mirror image?
So she asked or she noticed that the design is symmetrical, like perfectly symmetrical, and there's a reason for it to be symmetrical. And yes, that's the style that we tend to use for our tribe. I suppose you could make it different. It's just, it's in the style of that region, I guess is how I could say it. So a la Western Montana, a la Salish. I don't know, I think a lot of, it just has a sense of balance, and I just never, I think sometimes when people do stuff like that, they'll put like a story on there, like they'll try to leave like a story, and it just depends on the family, how they want to do the designs for their beadwork. But we did it this way because we were admiring old beadwork from like the early 1900s, and that was still a very admired style of design. So that's why we did it like that.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, when I was taught beadwork, we were taught to do it symmetrical because of the balance that we seek in nature and the balance we seek with everything around us. So
Yeah,
that is
I
one of the
was-
teachings we are given
Yeah.
for some of us.
I was thinking too, also the symmetry of the body as well, in there. I don't know if that was part of it back then, thinking that way, but.
Well, and it looks like the quilting tradition is very similar, right? There's
Yeah.
balance within that as well.
Thank you, that's a great observation. The lady in the red.
Just a technical question of when you make the design, so you made the design and it was on a graphic or something that you said, and then how do you transfer that with the colors, so then you get that and then you bead over the design that's on there? Is that how, is that how that
Right.
works?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who still, okay, she asked, how did I transfer the design with the color, because I did it as a graphic first. So, I just humble myself and just admit to how I bead, and I bead on a stabilizer. So, you can get it at a fabric store. It's like a real hard polyester type of thing. It's white, and I layer that. That's how I was taught to bead. Other ways I've seen is canvas, sewing together like layers of canvas and paper bags. Sometimes paper bags are sewn, and then it makes like a hard or like a stiffer foundation. And then, but my grandma, I just call her grandma, she's my yaya, she always used stabilizer, and when she used stabilizer, it was before what girls are doing today, or what people are doing today, and it was very thin. And then as years gone by, now everybody uses this really thick stabilizer, and so we take the design from the computer. So it just depends on what kind of program you use, but us in particular use, for those designs, all of them, they're made on Microsoft Word. And I don't know how he does it. But he you know, he bends the lines into these shapes, but they're based off of an actual, like a drawing or something, an image. And then he arranges it, okay, and then he prints it out, but they only come in the 8x10 or 8x11, whatever the size of paper is. It comes out and we printed color, and then we've already like chosen colors on the computer, like put the colors together. So then by the time we printed out, it looked kind of like that, printed out. And then he put it together like a puzzle. And then after he got it together the best he could, then we cut out the shape of it. And then I took that paper and laid it over the stabilizer, and then I sewed it all together.
Oh, wow.
And then I started, how I usually start is I'll do one row around on the outside to kind of keep it all, because when you start putting the beads in the hole, somehow it like distorts the thing that you're beading onto, so it'll like shrink or bend or whatever, so I don't know if that answered it, but
Yes, thank you.
yeah, it's all sewn together.
That little bit of movement you were talking about, I remember a story I was taught is that you always have to talk to your beads to get them to behave so that they lie down properly, otherwise they'll do stuff like that because they're quite mischievous little spirits, so.
So do you have any kind of, a stretcher or anything for your stabilizer? Or is it like stretched onto something?
Oh,
Or is it just like a big piece of cloth and you're working it?
so she asked if I have a stretcher for the stabilizer. In the stabilizer, I guess it could stretch. It would more tend to warp or shrink than stretch. And it doesn't go on a stretcher.
Okay.
I started this sentence, the last thing I was saying. Some people still bead a very older style, and that's like where they'll bead directly onto hide. That stretches, and I think that's why they'll use like a paper bag, or they'll use something with the hide, like, I don't know what their secrets say. I don't know what they're using, but it's an older style of beading and takes a lot of skill. And I think that's why I stuck with the pelon. That's what it's called pelon. I stick with that, and that's just what I was taught since I mean, obviously younger generation, and my grandma, she's real thrifty, you know, and so she, you know, that's how she taught me. And so it doesn't really stretch, but it does shrink, like when you start putting a bunch of holes in it.
It would buckle, right?
Yeah, so you have to not pull so tight, but yeah.
I know in Métis beadwork, when we do the Stroud cloth, I know a lot of beaders will use the hoops, the stretch bar hoops. Myself, I bead rather organically, and being a high tenor, I bead a lot on high, so I don't use hoops anymore, because I also find like once you've got the design partially done, you can't move the hoop, because you can't put the hoop over the beadwork, right? So it only works for like small pieces, and then you can't use it anymore, so.
Right. Thank you. Is there ever a bad bead day?
She asked if there's ever a bad bead day, and there is. So I know it's different for each person, because I think beading is just a very intimate skill to have learned from somebody. And I think that's why it ends up being like either a very close friend or like a relative that will have shown it to you, because it just takes a lot of time, and it's one of those things that happens with practice. And I know with my girls have all picked it up, but it takes a lot of patience, and some of the things I'm very, very thankful to still have, because I know this is starting to happen to a lot of my friends, is my eyesight is one. And then the other one is like steady, like not steady, but healthy hands, I guess. I have a lot of friends that have arthritis in their hands, and so those are challenges. And also there's a lot of people that I admire, but one of the things that I admire their work, and one of the things my aunt taught me, my late aunt taught me, is that sometimes you wouldn't always correct a mistake, because it's a reminder, because once you get going, sometimes you'll look back and there's a mistake like way far back, and you get mad and you think, I should take it all out, I should take it out. But here it turns out you've been beating for days and days and days, and that's how much work you're gonna take out, so which means it's gonna take you that many more days to get back where you were, plus how much more you gotta finish. And my aunt taught me, like, no, don't do that. Don't do that, because that's a reminder that we're human, and we make imperfections,
Right.
and we're not perfect. And so you leave that there, because that's a reminder to you that for yourself, that you're human. And so me, not very often will I take work out, and I guess it's a really personal decision for a lot of beaders, because on the flip side, there's a lot of beaders who were taught, no, you take it all out and you fix it. I know some very skilled beaders that's how they were brought up, is you fix that, you fix it and make it, because that's what you're trying to do, and make it good, make it right. So it just depends on where you're from, and who taught you, how you're brought up. I feel like it's a very individual, personal thing, like your past to beading, you know. But like, I think the challenge, you know, like working on something, and you have to decide, am I gonna sabotage that out, or am I gonna keep going, or am I cool with that, you know? So,
I have to agree with a lot of what you said. I too was taught, when you make a mistake, it's, you leave it, because that's, showing your humbleness to the creator, because we're not perfect. But at the same time, when I want something a certain way, I'm gonna pull it up. I remember one pair of earrings I did for a friend, and they were my strawberry moon earrings. And I spent 3 days, I probably pulled them out 6 times, pulling them apart and putting them back together to get them exactly the way I wanted to have them for her. And I don't do that. I normally don't do that. If something happens when I'm eating, I normally just leave it, because it's just part of the work. Like I said, I like to work organically. So whatever happens, happens, and that's how it is meant to be. You know, I like to let those intentions just flow through the work and let the beads go where they may, so.
Leanne, do we have some questions from online?
We don't.
Wow.
Okay. And Shannon, what's your question?
I have a question about colours, how they get chosen and how much of tradition comes into the colour?
Oh, the colors. So the colors, well, for myself, I don't think I've ever really, I try not to use black. I will intentionally use black on other things, but the colors, like, there's one color that I used on this board that I was able to get a hold of, but one time I learned about, so she asked about colors, I keep forgetting to repeat the question. I guess when beads were first traded, there was only like a very few amount of colors that you could get. And there's this blue that, I can't really point to it, but you know, on that board that they used for this poster, for this exhibit, the blue flower with the gray middle, and then on the tips of the hearts, there's like a different color blue. that color is based off of a trade bead color. And I think it's like cerulean blue or something like that. And,
A little bit darker, maybe more of an indigo.
yeah, I like that. I like stuff that comes from our old people, but I think it's a really personal decision, like the type of color, because they have so many different kinds of beads these days. There's neon beads that people use, and for myself, I just tried to do that, and I've always, since I was a little kid, been interested in color theory. And one of my painting instructors, because I did take art when I first started college, way a long time ago, and I tried to use some of the stuff that they taught me when I color my stuff. You know, I try to carry colors throughout, and so I try to use some of that. But other than that, I try to use older colors. You know, I try to use some of the older colors that our people had from back in the day, just to keep it real. but yeah, we're in trouble.
So much on that. There he is. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Remember when you said that, an old baby could sit in it? Not one little one? What about, old baby kitten?
My son said, he said, remember how I said no baby can sit in the little board? He said, what about kittens? Yeah, probably a kitten could sit in that little board, son.
Thanks for your question.
Don't know how patient. Need your coffee.
All right, anybody else? Oh, okay.
How did you do the laces on the cradle?
Oh, the laces, he said, how did I do the laces on the cradle board? So, my husband sewed those boards together, and, the laces were what he learned from his mom. And so he cut out the strings, and he cut all of the holes for it, and he laced it the way that his mom would lace her board. Because I think they had at least one board that I know of that was in their family, and he used that, and so all the boards that he sewed together, he did like that.
I'm sorry if I missed this from the beginning, but are boards normally passed down to the generations, or would families make new boards, every generation or so?
So she's asking, are these usually passed down or are they generational?
Yeah, the boards are heirlooms, so I had, yeah, you weren't here yet.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, had told everybody that my mom and grandmother were very hardworking women, and they didn't have time to do boards for us, and so I didn't have a board. A lot of our family didn't have boards, so I wanted one, so I did one, and these boards will be for my kids. So I was gonna do one, and then after we got pregnant with the second baby, I was like, I have to do another one now because I can't. I'm not gonna give my one son a board, like, give me that, I gotta go get this. This guy is my ears no more.
Well, thank you all for the wonderful questions. We appreciate your participation, and thank you, Salisha, very much for sharing your experiences and your stories. That was wonderful to hear. And got a few giggles out of all of us.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Adele for all of her work here. I'm really honored to be part of this, and I know when you get a chance to meet the other artists, but I'm very appreciative of Adele's work.
Thank you. And thank you to the gallery for having us and for hosting this talk online and in person. We're so grateful to be able to do this, especially in the time of COVID. So thank you, Nancy and Leanne, for all of your hard work. Oh my gosh, they have been absolutely amazing in getting this show to where it is at. And yeah, so thanks again, and we'll close on that.
So thank you everyone for coming tonight. You are welcome to walk around the exhibit and look at the work. And while you have Adele here, you can talk to her and Salisha about their work. And for those of you online, this show is at Cityscape Community Art Space, which is at 3rd and Lonsdale in North Vancouver until November 13th. So you can come in person and check it out. Or there is a wonderful video that we did online that could at least give you a glimpse of the show with Adele walking you through the studio. So thanks everyone for attending. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, ladies. It was so informative, and welcome to Vancouver. Amazing.